You ever look at a really complex set of rules and just wonder, where did all this come from? Well, today we're going to see how ancient legal minds could take just one single sentence and spin it into an entire system of ritual. It's a masterclass in logic, and it all starts with a few simple words. So yeah, let's dive in.
So that's the big question, right? How do you build these massive legal structures from just a handful of words? Think of what we're doing today as a kind of detective story. Seriously, this isn't just about some old religious text. It's this brilliant, intricate puzzle of logic and interpretation, and every single word is a clue. Okay, so our case file opens with what looks like a super simple rule. It comes from a really foundational text in Jewish law. This is our Exhibit A, our starting point. And that text is called the Mishna. Now, if you're not familiar, just think of the Mishna as the first major, greatest hits collection of Jewish oral traditions. It's basically the bedrock, the foundation that the huge, sprawling discussions of the Talmud are built on. And that's where we find our first, seemingly straightforward rule. And here it is. The rule says, all meal offerings that are prepared in a vessel require breaking into pieces. Okay, sounds pretty clear, right? You make something in a pan, you gotta break it. Simple. But the most important part of that sentence, the real clue, are the words, in a vessel. Because the second you say that, you're implying something else, right? Because the moment you get specific about one thing, you automatically create a question, well, what about the things that aren't in that category? What's being left out here on purpose? And that, right there, is exactly where the ancient commentators began their whole investigation. So the first glance answer is pretty simple. The rule doesn't apply to things like the 2 loaves, that's a special offering for the Shavuot festival, or the shewbread from the Sabbath service. And why not? Well, because they're baked in an oven, not cooked in a pan or a vessel. Easy enough. Case closed, right? Not even close. The real answer, the deep logic, is buried somewhere else entirely. To really get to the bottom of this, the sages had to go to the ultimate source code. A single, short verse from the biblical book of Leviticus. Okay, now the real detective work is about to start. All right, here's the verse. You shall break it in pieces and pour oil upon it. It is a meal offering. Looks simple, but believe me, every single part of this sentence is about to become a critical piece of evidence. You've got 2 actions, breaking and pouring, and then you've got these 3 little phrases that are going to dictate everything. Okay, so here's the big puzzle at the heart of this thing. The end of the verse, right? It is a meal offering. That sounds super broad, like it's trying to sweep everything in. It's a general rule. But then you have these tiny little words, it and upon it, that seem to be doing the exact opposite. They're like little bouncers at a club, keeping very specific things out. So you have one part of the sentence pulling everything in and another part pushing things out. How on earth can it be doing both at the same time? All right, let's break this down word by word. First up, you shall break it in pieces. The sages zeroed in on that tiny word, it. They saw it as a limiter. It doesn't say break them or break all offerings. It says break it, meaning just this one specific type, the one prepared in a pan. So what does that exclude? Yep, you guessed it. The same 2 we saw before, the 2 loaves and the shewbread. Boom, that one little word, it, just confirmed our first big exception. Okay, moving on. Next part of the verse says, and pour oil upon it. And here we go again. That phrase, upon it, is seen as another one of those limiters, another exclusion. It means you pour oil on this one, but not on something else. And in this case, that something else is a whole category, all of the oven-baked meal offerings. They are now officially off the hook for the oil pouring part. But wait, there's more. We get to the very end of the verse, it is a meal offering. And you're not going to believe it, but the sages read it is as another limiting phrase. This one creates a second exclusion from pouring oil. And this time, it's super specific. It's just for wafers, which are a type of oven-baked offering. So hang on a second. Now we have 2 different phrases in the same sentence kicking things out of the same rule. That's odd. All right, so after all that deep diving and microscopic reading of just one sentence, what's the final verdict? Where do we actually land? Let's put all these clues together and see the definitive set of rules that they built. And here it is, the final scorecard. You can see it all laid out. The basic meal offering in a pan, yep, it needs both breaking and pouring oil. But the 2 loaves and the shewbread, nope, no breaking required for them.
And what about the oven-baked stuff? Both the loaves and the wafers are excluded from the oil pouring rule. It's this incredibly precise system of rules, and it all came from just a couple of key words. But there's still that one little thing that's kind of bugging me, that one little detail that just seems extra redundant. And this is where our final expert, a sage named Rabbah, steps in with this absolutely brilliant insight that just clicks the last piece of the puzzle into place. So here's that nagging question. Why did the verse need two separate phrases to exclude things from the oil pouring rule? I mean, why use both upon it and it is? Wouldn't just one have been enough to get the job done? It really feels like overkill. But like I said, Rabbah had this beautiful, elegant answer. Rabbah's logic is just so clean. He basically asks, okay, think about it. Is there any single category of offering that actually has two different types? And the answer is yes. The oven-baked offering. It comes in two forms, loaves and wafers. So of course it needs two exclusions. It makes perfect sense. One exclusion, upon it, takes care of the loaves. The other one, it is, takes care of the wafers. And just like that, poof, nothing is redundant anymore. Every single word has a job to do. It's brilliant. And that really brings us to the big picture here. This whole exercise, it's more than just a clever legal puzzle, right? It's a window into a whole way of thinking. It begs the question, what does this kind of intense, almost obsessive focus on every single word tell us about how a culture finds meaning in its most important texts? I think it shows that for them, no word was ever filler. No phrase was an accident. Every syllable was a doorway into an entire world of meaning, just waiting to be unpacked.